Yeah. Good evening and welcome to the Thursday, January 6, 2022 meeting of the Planning Board. Pursuant to Senate Bill 2475, signed into law by Governor Baker on June 16, 2021, suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law C-30A, Section 18. This meeting of the Shrewsbury Planning Board will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation can be found on the town's website at www.shrewsburyma.gov/coronavirus. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen or watch the meeting may do so by visiting www.shrewsburymediaconnection.org/. To participate in the Google Meet with video, please contact the Shrewsbury Planning Department at planning@shrewsburyma.gov, and a Google Meet link will be sent to you. To participate by phone in the public comment portion of this meeting, dial 1-636-707-2804 and enter the following PIN 477-599-255#. Please mute your device until the chair of the planning board addresses your agenda item or opens the meeting to public comment. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the town's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive recording of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. With that being said, I'd like to do a roll call. So after you hear your name, please respond in the aye. Mr. Rotalakis?
Present.
Mr. Rao?
Present.
Mr. Jerry?
Present.
Mr. Thomas?
Present.
Mr. Iliadi?
Present.
Mr. Cahill?
Present.
Okay, thank you very much. Our first item of business is to review and approve minutes. We did not receive any minutes for this meeting, so we can move to the second item, which is to review and sign bills. I have bills, several of them. The first one is for Gatehouse New England for legal ads in the amount of $341.04. One from WB Mason for office supplies for $75.85. GZA Environmental for Falcon Farms Geotechnical Review for $779.38. Graves Engineering 171, 173, and 191 South Street Site Plan Review for $1,486. Another Grave Engineering for 34 to 36 Harrington Avenue, Second Site Plan Review for $672, totaling $3,354.27. Do I have a motion?
I move that we authorize the expenditures as read by the chair.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor. Mr. Rotalakis?
In favor.
Mr. Rao?
In favor.
Mr. Jerry?
In favor.
Mr. Thomas?
In favor.
Mr. Boulay is in favor as well. Excuse me. Go around for board member comments. Mr. Rotalakis?
No comments this month, Mr. Chair, other than to wish everyone on the board and in our audience a Happy New Year.
Thank you. Mr. Rao?
No comments, Mr. Chairman. Again, wishing everybody a Happy New Year and hope things will change.
I'm with you there. Mr. Jerry?
I have no comments either.
Mr. Thomas?
No comments.
And I have no comments other than to echo the other board members' sentiments for a Happy New Year for everyone. And hopefully we can get through this sooner rather than later. Our first item of business is a continued hearing for Greenbrier. Excuse me. For Greenbrier Drive cul-de-sac definitive subdivision, Cypress Avenue Development Partners, location 0 Greenbrier Drive. I have a note here for an additional request for continuance. Mr. Cahill.
Correct. We received a request for continuance for the deadline and the hearing itself to February 3rd, 2022.
Okay. Does anyone on the board have any questions or comments relative to allowing the extension? Mr. Rotalakis.
No comments other than I would move that we grant the extension of the hearing as well as the decision deadline relative to the definitive subdivision.
Okay, before I ask for a second, I'm just going to ask the other board members in case they had a question or comment relative to the extension. Mr. Rao,
No comments, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Jerry,
No comments or questions.
Mr. Thomas.
My only question is, should we move the deadline date in case of a snow emergency on the date of our next meeting?
Well, yeah, because the decision deadline is actually the same day. That will need to be changed too, right, Mr. Cahill?
So the decision deadline, no, that's correct, February 3rd. So just the decision needs to be made on that day. It's fine. They only requested for February 3rd, so I don't think we can change that on them now. There are contingencies in state law about when a snowstorm happens or other natural events, so I'm not too concerned.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, and I think with the possibility that we'll still likely be remote, I'm not sure that the snow would have as much of an impact as it would if it was an in-person.
Yeah.
I'm crossing my fingers we're back to City Hall, to Town Hall on February 3rd, but
We'll see.
I'm not sure. Okay, I did have a motion to allow for the continuance, so I have a second.
Second.
All in favor, Mr. Rotalakis,
In favor.
Mr. Rao,
In favor.
Mr. Jerry,
In favor.
Mr. Thomas,
In favor.
and Mr. Boulay is in favor as well. That brings us to our next item of business, which is a continued public hearing. Excuse me. This public hearing is for mixed-use commercial residential development, site plan approval and special permit. Location is Harrington Avenue 34, Harrington Avenue 34 LLC, location 34 to 36 Harrington Avenue. I do have a note here. Due to Mr. Perna missing 2 consecutive meetings, he will not be able to participate in any decision should one be made today. But Mr. Iliadi will be sitting in and can vote on this particular project. Mr. Grenier, please introduce yourself and tell us where we're at.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, John Grenier, JM Grenier Associates, on behalf of the applicant. Really, the last thing that we were waiting on was to finalize the process with the Conservation Commission. And at the last hearing, we did close up the hearing with Conservation Commission, so we're all set. The plans that you have in front of you reflect all of the requests from Conservation as well as the Planning Board and their consultant. So there's no further modifications that need to be made to the plan. Everything is concurrent, both the Planning Board and the Conservation Commission. So I think we're ready to wrap things up with the Planning Board. I believe Bernie had drafted a decision. So with that, I have nothing else to add.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Grenier. Anyone on the board have any questions or comments relative to this hearing? Mr. Rotalakis.
I guess my only question is, has an order of conditions been issued?
They closed the hearing. We have not received, unless my client has gotten it in the mail. I just talked to my client yesterday. They haven't received the order in the mail, but that should be coming.
Okay.
Does that satisfy your question, Mr. Rotalakis?
Yes, as long as the decision just says that, that I think it does, that refers to an order of conditions.
Okay. Mr. Jerry.
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Thomas.
I have no further questions.
Mr. Iliadi. Oh, you're on mute, Mr. Iliadi.
I'm sorry. No comments or questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any comments or questions either. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to be heard? Looking at the participation level on the screen here, I think I account for everyone, so I don't believe there's anyone in the public. With that, I'll take and entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I move that we close the public hearing on the special permit and site plan approval for 34-36 Harrington Avenue.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, Mr. Rotalakis,
In favor.
Mr. Jerry,
In favor.
Mr. Thomas,
In favor.
Mr. Iliadi,
In favor.
and Mr. Boulay is in favor as well. As Mr. Grenier did mention, there was a draft decision. Has everyone had an opportunity, or does anyone have any questions or comments relative to the decision as drafted? I'll go around the table. Mr. Rotalakis.
No, I think I'm all set with the decision.
Okay. Mr. Thomas,
I'm all set with the decision.
Mr. Jerry,
Nope, I reviewed it and I'm all set as well.
Mr. Iliadi.
All set.
Very good. I would like to, I'm not going to talk to every item that's in the decision, but there was somewhat of a difference for this particular project that I would just like to have on record. So the decision is pretty standard. There are no waivers associated with it. But on the decision, item 6, I just want to read a quick paragraph. Item 6 is the applicant or its successors and assigns shall submit to the planning board a post-development traffic report. The traffic report shall be submitted 12 months after the tenant occupancy of the commercial development and occupancy of at least 75% of the total apartment units. The traffic report shall include data from the Shrewsbury Police Department documenting all incidents and complaints along Harrington Avenue, Muzzy Avenue, Whitney Street, and the intersection of Harrington Avenue and Muzzy Avenue, and the intersection of Harrington Avenue and Whitney Street, and the intersection of Harrington Avenue and easterly entrance to the Lakeway Commons during the 12-month post-development period and the 12-month pre-development period for the purpose of determining the need for supplemental traffic controls or traffic calming measures along Harrington Avenue. The planning board reserves the right to request a de minimis change or a site plan modification to the site or off-site mitigation in the event the board finds that there was significant increase in the traffic incidents or complaints from residents in the post-development period. Again, the balance of the decision is pretty standard in meeting with our general guidelines that we have for decisions. With that,
Steve,
I'll entertain a
sorry,
motion. Yes.
just to interrupt. There are 2 waivers requested. That,
Oh, there was-
Mr.
I'm
Grenier
sorry, I must have
requested.
missed
Yes. Just going back, I don't know if you have it in front of you on page 3. The following waivers were requested. The first one is to not provide a photometric plan.
My apologies. Yes.
And the second one was to not provide a neighborhood or community facility. That one, both of them were recommended for approval by myself, the planning board, and the planning department. The first one is because it is in such a well-lit commercial area, and to the east, there's not much residential development, and the lights are going to be away from the northern residents. The other one was the neighborhood community facility. I think when the overlay was passed for Lakeway, it was envisioning these to be really large-scale projects, not 14 units. We're talking like 40 or 50 units, where something like a large playground or something for the community would make sense. There is an outdoor seating area for everyone, but I again recommended the approval of this waiver.
Very good. Does anybody have questions or comments relative to the waivers? Okay, so you want to include that in the motion, Steve, when you read forth the
Right.
motion?
I will do that.
Thank you.
Okay. So given the hearing is closed, then I would move that we authorize the clerk to execute the decision entitled Decision of the Planning Board regarding application for site plan approval and special permits 34-36 Harrington Avenue, LLC, and also that the board vote on the 2 waivers relative to the photometric plan and the community facility, as well as those votes required under the special permits for the special permit under the Lakeway Business District. I believe there are 4 of them.
Okay, and so Bernie, I think we had talked about potentially bringing these into 2 separate motions, but do you think one is sufficient?
I think it's important to read out the 4 special permits. They're at the bottom of the decision, starting on page 8. So just read the top line.
Okay.
The vote of the special permit, or vote in accordance with the Shrewsbury zoning law,
Okay.
section 7 and so on.
Then I guess I would amend the prior motion and include that as part of the vote on those 4 special permits under the Lakeway business under the Lakeway bylaw, that specifically that we'd be voting on a special permit in accordance with section Roman numeral 7, capital M 9, lowercase b, multiple buildings on a single lot. Also voting on a special permit in accordance with the Lakeway bylaw, Roman numeral 7, capital M 9, lowercase e 7, relative to flat roofs. And also voting on a special permit in accordance with the Lakeway bylaw, Roman numeral 7, capital M 6, lowercase a, mixed use development, horizontal mix. And finally, a special permit in accordance with the Lakeway bylaw, Roman numeral 7, capital M 6, lowercase a 1, multifamily garden type apartments.
So, Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman,
Richard.
I would
Yes.
just recommend as you go around the room, so to speak, and ask for everyone's vote. If anyone objects to one of those 4, to just say so, and we'll put it on record.
All right, so maybe before I go around for the vote, I'll ask, is there any objections to any of the special permit as defined by Mr. Rotalakis? First up,
Or the waivers.
for the waivers, Mr. Rotalakis.
I have no objections to either the waivers or those special permits under the 4 sections of the Lakeway bylaw.
Thank you, Mr. Jerry.
I have no objections either.
Mr. Thomas,
I have no objections.
Mr. Iliadi,
No
and
objections.
Mr. Boulay has no objections either. With that, I will go around and poll for a vote on this particular hearing. Mr. Rotalakis,
I'm in favor of the clerk executing the decision as well as granting the 2 waivers and the 4 special permits under the Lakeway bylaw.
Mr. Thomas.
Was that your motion, Steve? Sorry.
He had already
No,
given
that
the
was-
motion. This is
Wasn't
now
okay. Oh, right, you did it before. I'm sorry. I
did the
forgot.
motion. I asked
Went back.
questions. If there were
Yep.
questions, now we're now voting. So, Mr. Thomas,
I am in favor of the decision as read by the chair and the vice chair.
Mr. Jerry,
I'm in favor.
Mr. Iliadi,
In favor.
Mr. Boulay is in favor of both the decision, including waivers as well as the special permits as outlined by the motion. With that, I think we're all set. So, Mr. Grenier, you are all set to go.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy New Year to everyone as well.
Happy
You
New
too.
Year to you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, that brings us to actually the end of our meetings for this month. We do have a couple of new business items. Mr. Cahill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be brief. There are 3 items that are going to be on the agenda today, but also I think probably for the next couple meetings. And included in that, I'll add, which isn't there today, is we are going to be coming forward with some zoning articles for annual town meeting. Although it's in May, as you know, town meeting season starts now for town departments. The first order of business is new businesses, the Shrewsbury 2016 master plan. So Rowan, the assistant town planner, myself have been working diligently through the fall to get the updates on each of the tasks that were assigned to responsible parties throughout town. So everyone from the police department to the school department, building, planning, you name it, town manager's office, everyone had some responsibility that was given to them by the steering committee who helped to write the master plan. So Rowan and I, we put together, the planning department's put together a memo for this board, which is going to be shared with you after this meeting. It's not quite done, but we have done all the completions of the updated master plan. And you'll read, as you read through the task list and responsible parties, you'll see our changes underneath, our recommendations for changes. So you'll see if something's been completed, what actions have been taken in the last 5 years, because we are at it's at its half-life right now. So these master plans go about 10 years. and we're at 5 years right now. So we're going to be looking in a couple of years to get some funding to start the process again for renewing this and redoing it, an update. But this time we thought this is a great time to get a snapshot of, well, where are we now? What have we done? And what can we do to get more done in the next few years before we start to update the plan? So you'll be receiving that, and we'll have a longer discussion next time. If there's any points of contention or compliments or whatever, you can be as happy or sad about what we've done or not done in the last 5 years, but we'd love to hear it from you. And we want to present it to the public as well. And it will be going after, we wanted the planning board, because you are the keepers of the master plan, so to speak, to see it first. Of course, the selectmen will also get a peek at it, of course, as well, and the whole town. We'll put it online, of course, on the website for people to look at and review. The second one, oh, sorry, any questions about the master plan update, or is that pretty clear? I don't see any. Just raise your hand and I'll use a little raise your hand button if you have a question or comment. The next one's the Community Preservation Committee. So as you know, the town approved the Community Preservation Committee, the creation of it through town meeting votes and ballot measures and all that. And people were assigned to be committee members in the past year. Your very own Stephen Boulay is the planning board representative. So we have a representative from Conservation Commission, Historic Commission, Planning Board, Parks and Cemetery, Housing Authority, and then we have, let's see, 3 or 4, I have it right here, at-large, 4 at-large members representing the whole town. Just to give you a very brief outline, they've met a few times in the fall and had some training at the end of, I think it was the beginning of November, excuse me. Right now, today, I just wanted to give you an idea of what's happening, because this board, as well as the other boards and commissions I just read out, will be involved in providing feedback. So what's going to happen, what's happening right now is that the state, it requires that the CPC come up with a community preservation plan to kind of give it some guidance, give itself some guidance about how it wants to go forward, and when the things they want to accomplish, specifically by spelling out the needs of the town and the different areas that the CPC looks at. Those areas, as a reminder for those of you paying attention or not paying attention, but it's open space and recreation. So that's actually 2 items, right? Those are things that the CPC can invest in and spend funds on. The other one's historic preservation. The other one's community housing. So what's happening now is the Community Preservation Committee has started putting together kind of the bones, the outline, if you will, of this report. And what it's going to do now is start to set up meetings where, with first the committees and boards, to get their input on each of those items I just read out, those topics, those areas. And then that will be, and they're going to be looking for things like what are the needs the town has that you feel that the town has in these areas, and then what are some of the goals we could have. That's going to be followed by a public forum for everyone in town, not just boards and committees, but everyone. I don't know if it'll be in person or online yet. At the moment, we're going to plan this in person somewhere. And we're looking at April for that. And that will be heavily advertised. So anyone at home, if you're wondering how am I going to find out about it, we're going to heavily advertise that through social media and flyers and everything else to get people. So next time when we're here, Steve will be helping me, or maybe I'll be helping Steve presenting, and we're going to kind of have it really formatted so it's not just hodgepodge, that we're not just throwing out things. We're going to kind of keep it formatted, but we'd really like you to, we're going to give you some examples from other towns and would like you to look through them and then kind of brainstorm each of these topics. What do you think makes sense? And when you look at the other towns' reports, you'll get a really good idea of what they're looking for, I think, but we'll help you guide you through the process as well. But it's important, I think planning definitely has some input and plays a part in this. So, so then that is kind of the next step. That's what we're working on right now. The step after that will then be to complete that plan for the CPC. So they have a plan going forward, some guidelines. It's also important to say that plan is a living document. So every year, the CPC is required to hold another public forum and update it. So if we don't get it perfect the right first time, which will never be perfect, but we don't get it quite right, next year we'll have another crack at it, and each year thereafter. So if somebody feels like something got omitted this year, and they feel like, or so they just come up with a great idea or some other goal or need, by all means, they can approach the committee in the preceding time and offer that to the committee. We can put it on next year. So after the plan's done, then the next step will be for the committee to create applications. So actual applications, what you would fill out, the criteria for applicants who have ideas and want to come forward and suggest a program or project to spend that CPC money on. And then the hope is at the moment, or at least the intended timeline is that the applications will start to be open for people to submit sometime mid to late summer, and the deadline would be sometime late fall for the submittals. And then what would happen is, with the money that we have for the next fiscal year, we would, or say the fiscal year after that, this would go for those ideas would then be voted at town meeting 2023. So submissions by the end of the year, review throughout the winter by CPC, recommendations in 2023, town meeting, vote in May of 2023. So that's kind of the timeline. I don't want to get into any more details tonight. And like I said, I'll be sharing some of that information with board members, so please take a look. The final one, I should probably pull up my agenda, is the Affordable Housing Trust. Oh, Perna, go ahead. I'm sorry, I should have stopped for questions.
No, I just raised that. I was wondering in terms of the taxes, you're supposed to go on the taxes sometime this year, right? Is it already in being billed, or is it going to be sometime later?
Great question. I was going to bring it up next time, but I'll happily talk about it tonight. So it's already started to collect the taxes. There is a surcharge on local property taxes. And to date, well, I can't remember the to date one, but estimated so far for the remaining fiscal year, which goes through June 30th, is it's estimated by the town accountant's office approximately $789,000 will be collected by the end of this fiscal year. So we're only halfway through the fiscal year as of this week. We're just starting the third quarter. So we're estimating at the moment about $780,000, $90,000 to be spent in that round. It doesn't have to be spent, of course, but for projects that's what will be available. So a really good amount, really healthy amount to start with. So it's exciting. I think I always say to Steve, who's again the planning board rep on CPC, this is one of the most exciting boards you can be on, or committees. It's, you know, you really get to see a lot of cool and interesting projects. So it's exciting to have it up and running. Any other questions, Steve? You're on mute if you're talking.
Sorry. And to everyone else, the state match does not come into effect until fiscal year 2023. So we won't get any match for the taxes collected through this year, but the following year, I believe it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood. It ranges somewhere about 30%. Is a good rough number that the state will then match for future for every year going forward, based on, you know, the amount that they're collecting.
Yep. Thanks, Steve. Any other questions or comments right now? Otherwise, like I said, you'll be receiving information for these first two items at least right away for next month's meeting. So the next item on new business is the Affordable Housing Trust. So the trustees were appointed last year. So we do have a board of trustees now for the Affordable Housing Trust. They've only just had their kickoff meeting. They're a little bit behind CPC where they're at. It's not too dissimilar in that they are going to be coming up with a kind of an action plan and overall kind of goals and needs for the town. It's a great guiding document. They're not required to do it, but it is something we want to do as a town so that we have a direction forward and they can start working on projects. So we are just getting that one off the ground. We do have in our reserves some fee in lieu of funds that we collect over the last 12 years. We're actually approaching $1 million. It's 900 and change. I forget exactly the amount, but it's over 900 at this point. So they do have some money to play with. And of course, affordable housing trusts can go and do go in other towns to their own CPCs. And since the CPC has required to do 10% each year, set aside 10% at least for affordable housing, they can go with their own, the housing trust can go to CPC with a project in mind and put it forward and request a project to be recommended by town meeting. So they can work together. I mean, they do work together, and it's a source of funds in addition to those fee in lieu funds. So the idea is, of course, to work on affordable housing in town, and that's exactly what they have to spend the money on. So that's an exciting one too, and I think we can get some affordable housing built in the years to come, and really work on our subsidized housing inventory. There's not at the moment a plan for your feedback, but there will be. We're gonna, like I said, we just did the kickoff, so that will probably be a little later, probably closer to spring when I'll be coming back again. But I just kind of wanted to let you know that this year in 2022 it is coming and it is happening. And anyone else who's wondering what happened to that affordable trust, well, now you know. So we are working on it.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Cahill. I don't have anything else on our agenda. So other than wishing everyone to stay happy, healthy, I would take a motion to adjourn.
I move that we conclude this evening's public hearings.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, Mr. Rotalakis,
In favor.
Mr. Thomas,
In favor.
Mr. Jerry,
In favor.
Mr. Rao,
In favor.
and Mr. Boyd's in favor as well. Thank you all for coming, and thank you for
Just have a
listening.
quick question.
Oh,
Sure.
yeah, sure, Dina.
Do we have to come to your office, Bernie, to sign for the special permits?
That's right. Were you on the board last year? I can't remember when you started now as an alternate. It was later, right? So we do DocuSign.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, so we'll be sending out, Emily, when she's back on Monday, we'll get that together and get it out to everyone.
Yeah, so,
All right.
So,
yeah, and as soon as
All
you
right.
get that, just click
good
the
question.
button
Good
and
question.
we're off and running. Very good. All right. Thank you all.
All right.
Good night.
Take care,
Thank you,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Bye now.